Hey folks, thanks for joining us. I'm Tony Carvajal, Executive Vice President at Florida TaxWatch, and we just wanted to give you a quick update on some of the projects we've been working about and give you an opportunity to reach out to us if you're interested in these or other projects into the future. It's July here in Tallahassee, and that means it's hot and it's quiet, but we're still producing lots of things for the upcoming legislative session, which is just about 2 months away for the first committee meetings. We've put out a few reports that I want to feature, and I'm going to introduce some folks that have written these reports. First, Jonathan Guarine. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. Hey, tell us about the Broward Up Report you just put out. That's gotten a lot of attention. It's about a program in South Florida at Broward College that is really having a big splash. What's the top line on that?
Yeah, so we released our Broward Up Report, and what we looked at was how a community-centric approach to tackling workforce issues in different communities that have historically not had a lot of post-secondary education. So what Florida TaxWatch did was see what the return on investment for a program like Broward Up would be. And so we found that not only would it help in participants get more employability skills, but it would also have a huge return on investment for the state of Florida from increasing tax contributions and also lowering the amount of public assistance that participants have. So it was a great report that we were able to see how something like that could possibly be a solution for the future of Florida in different areas. And we're excited to see what else can come from that.
I think folks here are used to us being a third-party investigator and kind of justifying what's out there. And this is just one of those things that has had a great return on investment. Folks would probably not be surprised to know that we play in multiple spaces in the education space. I mentioned Broward because Bob Nave, our Senior Vice President of Research, also has an education project down there. And Bob, you've been working on something called SMART, the Broward Oversight Commission. Folks may not know what we're doing, but give us a quick overview of what that project is and why it's so important. And I fumbled on it in Broward because this project is also in Broward. Tell me what it is.
Well, in 2014, the Broward voters approved a referendum that would issue $800 million in general obligation bonds to repair schools, meet a lot of their deferred maintenance needs, and also to make improvements and upgrades in music and art, safety and security, which is extremely important in light of the Parkland shootings a few years ago, technology improvements, athletic improvements, and things like that. The school board appointed a 9-member citizen oversight committee, bond oversight committee, to make sure that the monies are being spent properly and to kind of keep the project on track and on budget. And what TaxWatch has done since 2015 is we review the quarterly reports that the district submits to the Bond Oversight Committee. We do our own independent analysis of that report. And then when the Bond Oversight Committee meets, and they do that on a quarterly basis, we appear at the meeting, present our findings, and kind of help guide the discussion to make sure that the Bond Oversight Committee members are getting the answers to the questions that are important to them and to the taxpayers.
Monitoring this has been pretty interesting. I know that they're a little behind, and folks can look up our quarterly reports on our website, floridataxwatch.org, anytime to find out where that stands. And it's great that you go down there into the community to meet with not only the commission, but our partners on that, the Broward Community Foundation, the Broward Workshop. Our work is pretty important to keeping the accountability alive down there. Bob, while I have you, I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about a significant project you work on, and that's the Citizenship Institute. We just graduated the last class, and we're recruiting the next class. Why should people care about what the Citizenship Institute program is, and what do they need to do if they want to get somebody in the program?
Well, the importance of the Citizenship Institute is to identify up-and-comers in Florida businesses, people who are going to be running their companies in 10 or 15 years. These are people who have the good business acumen. They understand how their business works. But what they don't understand in large part is the interaction between government and business. Through the Institute, we help the participants better understand how to have their voice heard and respected by government, and also how government can not only help their business, but sometimes more importantly, how government can hurt their business. We have 3 1.5-day sessions. First session is on, again, having your voice heard and respected. It's designed to help them better understand how to engage with government officials. The second session is usually on budget and taxation. We want the participants to understand how the taxes that they pay and that their companies pay are used, collected, and distributed and used by government, and also how governments put their budgets together and what goes into putting a county budget or a state budget together. And then the third session, which is extremely important, deals with permitting and regulation. People who are interested in either starting another business or growing their current business would be surprised to understand the steps one has to go through to get the permits they need, and how much time and expense is involved in doing that. And as you said, we've just graduated our 5th class. We are recruiting our 6th class, which will begin at our fall meeting in October.
So if somebody wants to get engaged in that program, they reach out to you. You know, in your description there, what you failed to really mention is how deeply committed folks are, because this is actually a fun program. If I listened to something that marketed to me to come to a citizen program about government and budgeting and how to get engaged, I'd be sitting there thinking my eyes would glaze over. But I peeked in on that class and folks were hooting and hollering over a Lego game. And I know you do a budget exercise. I certainly hope that we get the next generation of talent in here, because this is not your typical leadership program and people come out of this change. So kudos to you, Bob, on that.
Thank you. And one of the things that we do is we put an emphasis on the practical exercises and not just have people speak to the participants. In the first session, the having your voice heard and respected, about a month before the first class, I'll send them a homework assignment, and it's an issue of importance. It could be like Okeechobee discharges or the extension of a power line through a neighborhood, and the participants are required to study the issue and do some role playing. And what we usually do is we'll tell them they'll get 10 minutes with a local official, and they think the local official is going to be me. And then at the last minute, I'll bring in a ringer like Governor Bob Martinez or Lieutenant Governor Jeff Kottkamp, so that they role play with a real government official and not some hack like me.
Well, I'm looking forward to actually sitting through this program myself. Jonathan and I are thinking about just joining in. Jonathan is clearly one of the up and comers. I'm one of the done and over, but you know, I'll sit in the back and hoot and holler myself. Hey, Jonathan, let me turn to you. You actually got some pretty interesting practical stuff that you've been putting out the last few months, and hats off to you for coming up with this notion. And that's the Beyond the Pandemic series. This is a set of commentaries that have really been looking at, so we're all so tired of talking about last year and what we were dealing with when we're in the pandemic. What do we have to do to adjust to the post-pandemic era? Tell me a little bit more about those, and where can people find those commentaries?
Yeah, as you had mentioned, most of the research over the past year was very much focused on what are we seeing in Florida's economy as it relates to the pandemic. So what our hope was with this commentary series was to shift that narrative and start looking forward. What are some of the changes that we've witnessed over the past year that have some long-term bearing for the state of Florida? What are these challenges in different spaces such as healthcare, education, or workforce that we are seeing? And so, for example, we looked at how the change to remote work, how that's something that will signify more long-term trends of technological displacement and advancement in Florida's economy, or for health, how something like telehealth can have a long-term impact, or for education, how remote learning has its drawbacks when it's not implemented across the state and you don't have attention towards internet access. So some of these things that we've seen over the past year are things that will stay with Florida regardless of whether or not we're in a pandemic. So it begins that narrative of what's in the long run. What are we seeing on the horizon? And so if you want to see those specific commentaries, you can check that out on our research library on the Florida TaxWatch website. And I recommend that you check that out and see some things that you may not have considered. Obviously, we've all seen how remote work and remote learning and telehealth have impacted everyone's lives. But just some of the implicit things that come with that. You should check it out and see what else that may mean for you.
So these have been ongoing series or things that we've released. I know that you two are working on something that's pretty exciting. And Bob, I'm going to start with you. I want you to talk a little bit about this project that we'll be teasing out at our annual meeting, which is coming up October 27th and 28th in Sarasota. And I hope each of you is going to join us. But this is a topic of climate change. And since I joined TaxWatch, this has been one of those conversations that you just keep bringing up. I'm so glad that we're engaged in this project. What is the conversation that we're looking at, and what can people be expecting to hear when they're at the annual meeting or when they get the report later on in the year?
The report focuses on the impacts of climate change on each individual sector of Florida's economy. We look at the agricultural sector, and we look at 10 non-agricultural sectors. And I think when the report is released, I think what the reader will be surprised to see is the breadth and depth of these impacts. Because when one thinks of climate change, one naturally thinks of sea level rise, and more frequent, more intense hurricanes. And those, can't deny those, but there are so many other effects much further inland. As the atmosphere gets more moist and wetter, one can expect more frequent rainfalls, more frequent inland flooding. We're also expecting to see saltwater intrusion as saltwater moves in through sea level rise. Then the effect on the aquifers and saltwater intrusion becomes an issue. And then other things that one might not like heat. With climate change, one can expect many, many more days of extreme heat in the year. And given Florida's large population of elderly residents, that could be extremely dangerous for our senior citizens, like me.
And Bob, you're talking about it as a planner, but Jonathan, you're engaged in this project too. I mean, you're our economist, and you're approaching this paper with the same vigor that Bob is. Tell us a little bit about what your engagement is.
Yeah, so there are across sectors, there is an inherent difficulty in trying to estimate a potential economic impact down the line over, say, 100 years. But you already see a lot discussed about how something such as a major hurricane can disrupt tourism to the state of Florida, or disrupt agriculture or supply chains even. So those are things that we can point to as saying, okay, if this example had this X amount of economic costs, well, if we can predict that there's going to be more severe hurricanes in the future, well, that will disrupt this. So for example, in 2017, when we had Hurricane Irma, how much that disrupted supply chains across the state and had that economic cost as well. Now, when we look at some of the different sectors, we notice a lot of it deals with the risk to property, and that's where a lot of the costs aggregate. But it shouldn't take away from us considering some of the secondary effects, such as what Bob alluded to, the health effects of heat-induced related illness, or what agriculture, how that may respond. So there's a lot of costs involved, and there's a lot of dynamic pieces at play, but it just underscores the magnitude of this issue in the state of Florida and how this is something that we should pay attention to and research more to understand.
So, sometimes I hear the term climate change or sea level rise or resilience, and I understand the importance of it. As a native Floridian, look, there's no way to get around this conversation. But what I'm really jazzed about is the angle you two are taking in terms of looking at this from an industry perspective, a community perspective. It is not about all those high level conversations that we don't think that we can actually impact as individuals. but it actually is going to be a conversation about what our lives are going to be like in Florida, and kudos to you. Now, I mentioned the annual meeting that's coming up. It's in Sarasota. You can register for that now. It's on our website at floridataxwatch.org. You know, we're slumming it at the Ritz-Carlton in Sarasota, as a matter of fact, on October 27th and 28th, but it's going to be a fantastic conversation. This is one of those leadership opportunities where folks come in, and we're also going to be covering issues that are for this upcoming legislative session and additional research that we've got coming out. So folks, if you're watching this, it's because you care about the work that Florida Tax Watch does, and we appreciate your support. We hope that we've teased out a few areas of interest. Maybe you didn't know that we were working in all these areas. We're going to start having these conversations, or continue these conversations on a monthly basis, and give you an update on not only what we've released, but what we've got coming up. I'll mention two particular projects that I'm working on that I want to make sure that you're aware of, because we want you to be part of it. The first is a follow-up to a report that Kurt wrote earlier this year on government leaseholds. If you haven't read that, go to our research hub at floridataxwatch.org and pull up Calling for Clarity. If you are somehow tied to an airport, a seaport, a spaceport, or interact and transact on government property, look, what's happening is that tax appraisers are looking at the leaseholds, and it's costing people lots of money. So you should read the report. And if you're interested in that, we're going to have some conversations starting middle of next month for a coalition that wants to build on the work that Kurt put out. But there's one other big project, and Jonathan, you were engaged in this one, that we're going to have a lot more conversations on between here and the end of the year. And we know it's going to be one of the key issues during this legislative session, and that's consumer data privacy. Obviously, we all want to protect our personal information. There's lots of reasons that consumer data privacy is on the agenda, not only in Florida, but across the globe. But there are some real fiscal consequences to the way that the bill was being addressed this last legislative session. And really, without the work that you, Jonathan, and TaxWatch did, we might have had some significant impacts. Right now, businesses would be having to deal with something, if I remember correctly, $36.5 billion of implementation costs that they would have to be dealing with right now. So if you're interested in either of those two issues, reach out to any one of us and we'll connect you to the right partners. And all of this will be suited for future work here. And with that, why don't we go ahead and wrap up? Gentlemen, anything that you want to bring up that you're working on or that people can be thinking about for next month?
Well, I would remind people that are interested in the Citizenship Institute, you can go to our website and there is a page that gives a better description of the program, has video testimonials from graduates, and also the application form is online.
Jonathan, anything that you want to send people off with?
Just to follow up what you were saying about data privacy, that's something on the horizon for Florida that I think it can't be avoided, and how we can shape that discussion and be a part of that. I think it's important to understand that it affects all taxpayers. And so it's worth understanding more, and TaxWatch is excited to be a part of that conversation.
So for my part, I just want to thank each of you for what you're doing, and thank everybody who watched this and supports Florida Tax Watch. We need your continued support so we can do the fiscal and government accountability work, not just at the state level, but all across the state. We're here in Tallahassee. If you're ever in the area, drop on in. And otherwise, we'll take care of things for you at the state level and at the local level. Thanks for inviting us into your businesses, into your communities, and into your life. And count on us to continue to be focused on taxpayer value and serving as the eyes and ears of Florida's taxpayer. Look forward to having a conversation with you soon. Thanks.